In my first vodcast of Grandfather's Learning Adventures, I promised in number 2 to tell you how it came about that Morris Ramsay was born in Dalgety, Scotland, but is buried in Irwin, Pennsylvania. Morris's father, William, was a coal miner. He had married Elizabeth Sharp when he was 21 and she was 19. After having 4 or 5 children, they were finding it hard to provide the kind of life that they wanted for their children, and they left Scotland for America, the land of opportunity, arriving in New York in 1852. I'm pretty sure that Morris was 4 years old, though immigration lists him as 2. Perhaps he was asleep when they checked in. It was not easy to be a coal miner in America, and when their next 3 children who were born in America died as infants, the family, discouraged, went back to Scotland. The family story, as I recall it, is that Morris in his teens and one of his older brothers wanted to return to America. Instead, the whole family did in 1863. William and his sons became prominent in producing the coal and coke needed to fire the steel industry. I urge a woman to write the female perspective about those times, although I will note at the start that Sadie Mariah Greer Hellman was 17 when she married Morris, and she bore 13 children, 2 of which died as infants, and lived to be 74. Now, there are many complex processes and chemicals involved in making iron of various types. Iron was used to construct the engines, railroads, and bridges which enabled the Industrial Revolution. This Industrial Revolution also required personnel of inventive initiative and capable of exciting leadership. The Ramsays rose to the challenge and invested their lives in making the revolution work. Read Erskine Ramsay's biography, an exciting story told by one of the clan. My father had told me that young Erskine Ramsay, one of Morris's nephews, worked for Andrew Carnegie in real estate, purchasing properties in what became the steel industry in Birmingham, Alabama, and after hours buying property for himself. And he followed Carnegie's lead in becoming a wealthy philanthropist. I was interested in this set of pictures which I found in Erskine's biography. Erskine calls these men his Pennsylvania bosses. One was his father, Robert, and one Robert's younger brother, Morris, my great-grandfather. Here is what Erskine says about the men in the photos. Andrew Carnegie, not an officer, but a large stockholder. H.G. Frick, president. Thomas Lynch, general superintendent, and succeeded Mr. Frick as president. Robert Ramsay, superintendent of mines and general consulting engineer, and Morris Ramsay, chief engineer. Under the wise and direct management of these men, each of whom remained with the company until his death, the H.C. Frick Company was developed into the largest and most outstandingly successful corporation of its kind in the world, and by continuing to develop and expand, it still holds its position. Formerly, the Carnegies received the very large amount of coke they consumed in their Pittsburgh blast furnaces from their associated corporation, the Frick Company, which produced it in its thousands of beehive coke ovens located at the mouths of its many mines in the Collinsville coke region. Today, when beehive ovens are a thing of the past, the same Frick Company coal is still used, but it is now taken direct from the mine mouths by Carnegie Steel Company towboats and barges on the Monongahela River to the modern Carnegie-owned byproduct coke oven plants located near the many blast furnaces. At the formation of the United States Steel Corporation, its largest subsidiary was, and probably still is, the Carnegie Company with its subsidiaries. Mr. Carnegie at all times held a majority of the stock of the Carnegie Company. Each of the other four men was one of the famous Carnegie Junior Partners. The undersigned feels a pride in the fact that from 1881 to 1887, at which time he entered the service of the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company in Alabama, he had the great honor and privilege of serving these Pennsylvania coal and coke pioneers as office clerk, master mechanic, engineer, and superintendent. They were his only bosses up to the time that he left Pennsylvania. Erskine Ramsay, Birmingham, Alabama, September 13th, 1930. Morris had a talent at both managing coal mining and coal miners. He became superintendent of the Morwood mines in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania. Here is a photo of his home. Carnegie had agreed to provide steel for the bridge designed by James B. Eads to span the Mississippi River at St. Louis. Construction began in 1867, using the Bessemer and Seaman Martin process for making steel. My ancestors had a hand in making the steel for it, and the bridge is still in use. In my first vodcast, number 1, I read Morris's letter to his eldest son, William, my grandfather. William was 16 when the letter was written. I believe that Morris knew that he himself had a health problem, and he was preparing his son to become the man of the house should Morris not live to care for his large family. Here is a family photo that he had taken sometime before 1891. Before we leave Morris, let's identify his wife and his children. His wife, Sadie Mariah Greer Ramsay, is seated on the left. Standing in the back row are Lizzie, 17, Hannah, 15, George, 13, Sadie, 18, and Will, 21. The youngest between the parents from left to right are Alice, 4, Mary Christine, 9, Robert, 6, Janet, 8, and Nellie, 3, in Morris's lap. In June 1890, before the photo was taken, there was an infant stillborn. Then, in January and August of 1891, after the photo was taken, Janet and Nellie died of diphtheria. Next, Adelaide was born in July 1892, and then Morris died on December 29, 1892, at age 44. William, Morris and Sadie's oldest son, was newly married when his father died. In my next podcast, number 3, I will tell you about William's life.